This week, I want to talk to you a little bit more about the history of Saint Nicholas. And have you heard of Saint Nicholas before? How much do you know of Saint Nicholas?
Well, okay, so different cultures have different concepts. I know here in America we have a totally commercialized thing, um, and but I think he was an actual, like a Byzantine monk or
Yep.
priest, if I recall, and he used to give gifts to poor children or something like that, and they made him a saint, and then he became a part of Christmas celebrations in different countries.
Yes. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about because over here it's we're recording this early, but over here it's the time of Sinterklaas.
Yeah.
And Sinterklaas is the Dutch version of Santa Claus, and that's actually how the name became known as Santa Claus in the United States as well. Yeah, it's commercialized in the U.S., but it's then again it's a developing story. It's one that's has like it started off with the saint that I want to talk to you a little bit more about first. So Nicholas was a bishop of Myra, which is a Roman town in what is now modern day Turkey. So he was a Greek. And the miraculous and charitable acts of St. Nicholas were well known in his time. He's mostly known for making anonymous donations of gold coins to poor families as a dowry, saving daughters from a life of slavery and prostitution. He would toss the coins into the house through a window, and they landed in shoes and stockings that had been hung up to dry. So a medieval tradition grew around this story, leading to the gift-giving custom of St. Nicholas Eve on December 5th. So December 5th is when we celebrate Sinterklaasavond over here.
Question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
When did this guy live? And was it before or after the church schism?
It was before the church schism. Sorry.
Schism. So it's before. Okay, so it's before the Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox Church split apart.
Yes. Yeah. So he even attended the Council of Nicaea, presided over by Emperor Constantine in the year 325. Where they would talk about the first Christian doctrines. Apparently, there are stories about how he had a fight with a delegate from Alexandria named Arius. Yeah. So
that guy started heresy.
Yes, he started a heretic belief that was quite popular in parts of Europe
and the Middle East.
And the Middle East, yeah, Arianism. Yeah, so where actually God the Father bestowed power onto his Son, making Jesus his first creation. And so it was a different, so they didn't have the Trinity as we do today.
Yeah, that's heresy.
Yeah. So actually the story goes that Nicholas was infuriated by these claims of Arius, and he slapped him in the face. And apparently, shocked by this behavior, the other bishops stripped Nicholas of his garments and jailed him. And then, according to the story, he spent the night in chains praying. And then, when the jailer visited him in the morning, Nicholas was free of his shackles and fully dressed in his robes again. And then when Constantine heard about this incident, he ordered Nicholas to be freed and fully reinstated as the Bishop of Myra. And his death was December 6th. So that's why you have the celebrations around this time. And in the year 343 AD, Nicholas was put in a stone tomb in the church where he served. And there are all these tales around how he also, he resurrected 3 kids that were about to be, or that were actually just killed by a butcher. and brought them back to life. And then he took care of the butcher. And so there's a lot of stories, and his legends like grew and grew, and he became more and more popular. He was the patron saint of prostitutes, sailors, travelers, thieves, and children. And Christians would make a pilgrimage to his tomb. And I'll include actually a picture of his tomb on our video on our YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. So anyway, the church was damaged in the year 1071 during an attack by Muslim invaders. And because people were afraid that his remains might be taken, Italian sailors broke open his sarcophagus and they stole his bones. And they are still now kept in an Italian church, where you can still see them today. It's a Byzantine church actually, where you can find the damaged tomb. Anyway, so they are now they were kept in a crypt in Basilica di San Nicola. So yeah, and in the year 1089 by Pope Urban II. They were left undisturbed for almost 900 years. And apparently the crypt wasn't opened until the year 1953, when the bones were removed for safekeeping. And then inside the crypt, the Pontifical Commission found many bones and a nearly complete cranium, determined to have belonged to one man who had been over the age of 70. And Nicholas was said to believed to be 75 when he died. And apparently there was a sweet-smelling, oily liquid oozing from St. Nicholas' bones. And then the church decided that the liquid was holy and imbued with healing properties. And they dubbed it Mani di Saint Nicola, or Santa Mana, the Mana of St. Nicholas. And there's like this ceremonious thing where they take like part of they take it from the crypt during a celebration on May 9th called the Feast of the Translation. So anyway, I found this online. I should probably double check these sources, but apparently they collect this and they sell it, or they put it in bottles.
Yeah, actually, there was a story like that in the Travels of Sir John Mandeville. There was, but they didn't place it in Europe. I think it was somewhere in the Middle East, or I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was on the eastern side of the Mediterranean somewhere, where Sir Mandeville, he said there is this monastery or this church where they have the bones of saints, and they stir the bones and this black oil comes out, and then they do something with it. I'm like, where do these stories come from? But it looks like you might have come across the same story.
Yeah, I'll include a link in the description.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff.
There's only like 50. There's only a small amount of liquids, and they mix it into holy water, and then it's sold in a small decorative glasses with the image of Nicholas painted, hand painted by local artists. But then this source I found says it's probably just condensation that's produced inside the tomb.
Yeah, I'd be careful with taking anything from a dead body and ingesting it.
Yeah. Anyway, although these bones they're old. They're like 1,700 years old. Anyway, so for hundreds of years, Saint Nicholas, he was the unchallenged bringer of gifts around his feast day, December 6th, December 5th. And then it took on the aspects of other earlier European deities, sorry.
Like Odin.
Like the Norse god Odin, or the Roman god Saturn. As a white-bearded man with magical powers like flight. And actually here in the Netherlands, he rides a white horse, He jumps from rooftop to rooftop, and he arrives in a steamboat. So, and he has his black helpers, which is controversial
The
nowadays.
Zwarte Piet.
Yeah. So
I
Zwarte
know about the
Piet.
Zwarte Piet.
Yeah, which actually is interesting because initially the helpers were they were kind of like demon-like, for example, like you have Krampus in German.
Yeah, that's us.
Uh,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I was wondering if you're going to mention Krampus.
yeah, so he's like a devil goat kind of
He's for the bad
creature.
kids.
Yeah, exactly, and Zwarte Piet is as well actually. But during the Reformation, Martin Luther, he was not happy with a saint being celebrated, and he thought it took away from the original meaning of Christmas, which is the birth of Christ. And he came up with the name with another Lutheran endorsed version of Saint Nicholas, and that was the Christkind. Or if in German, if you pronounce it as smaller, like they say Christkindl. And if you listen carefully, you might figure out how that turned into one of the names that is Kringle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like if you watch that old movie, what's it called? Miracle on 39th or 34th Street? And they're like, "What's your name?" Kris Kringle. It's been like 30 years since I watched that movie, or 20 years. So don't make fun of me. Well, make fun of me. It's fine, but yeah, it's stuff when it comes. By the time it gets to America, it's so garbled up. Like
but that's okay, because even the Christkindl or the Christkind is actually just like a Protestant version of a much older tradition. Because they wanted to take away from the Saint Nicholas, but that's still celebrated today. But because it was kind of like a baby Jesus, because that's literally what it means. Like kind, it means baby or child, so Christ child. Because he's not able to carry the gifts, they had to, they also had the helpers would then bring the gifts with them. So you actually have the beastly Krampus in Germanic regions. You also have Belsnickel. You have Knecht Ruprecht. And then in France you have Hans Trapp. Père Foutard, which is the French version of actually Saint Nicholas, who rides a donkey apparently instead of a horse, which everybody knows it should be a horse.
United States, it's reindeer.
Yeah, I know.
Sled pulled by reindeer.
So and over here it's Zwarte Piet. So Krampus is derived from a German word for claw. It's said to be the son of hell in Norse mythology. And he also shares characteristics with other scary demonic creatures in Greek mythology, including satyrs and fauns. So you actually have the Krampus Nacht or Krampus Night, where children look outside to see if the shoe or wood they've left out the night before contains either presents or a rod. And that's something that all of these stories have in common, is the rod, pretty much, is the helper that usually has a black face, but has nothing to do with blackface originally, at least. Is there to beat the children. And here in the Netherlands, the helper actually has a bag which has candy in it, but if you misbehave, you're taken in the bag as well, back to Spain, where according to the Dutch tradition, Saint Nicholas comes from. But a lot of our tradition was reinvented in the mid 19th century, because so much had gone missing during the Reformation. Because over here the Reformation was even more strict because of the Calvinism was more predominant here than Lutheranism. So they tried to reinstigate or reinitiate it, and then it did, like the Zwarte Piet did get some colonial attributes, and I'll include some pictures that people, like especially like a lot of people coming back from former colonies to the Netherlands, some of them find it highly offensive, although it has nothing to do with the American tradition of blackface. But some people do experience it that way, so you have like the controversy about this every year, which is
Yeah, and
fortunate.
it's funny because in the United States, the people that screech and shout the most about this blackface stuff are usually the same people that are doing it, like that governor of North Carolina, which I won't name, but that's
I have
usually it's
no
usually
idea, to be honest. I
all
didn't
on.
know what it was, but yeah, now they start to change them, and I think now they want to compromise on where the peaches have like soot on their faces, which is kind of what the idea is because they come through the chimney. Um, and in other traditions, they also check the oven to see if the cookies are ready. Um, but yeah, they do have a kind of like a different kind of feel to them, but it's also because they're coming from Spain, and because it does yeah. Anyway,
It probably is. It's probably
it
a
did morph into, similar to how Santa Claus has morphed over time as well, into this new commercial kind of entity.
so our Santa Claus in the United States is probably a conglomeration of like the different cultures because we did have a lot of Irish and Catholic influence, but also we had English and German influence as well. And so, like, in Santa Claus, the way it was taught here when I was a little kid, I have no idea what that's being taught now. Probably something awful, but you would see Kris Kringle, and sometimes they'd say jolly old Saint Nick, like they do in the night before Christmas. He's almost always depicted as fat,
Yeah.
and he lives at the North Pole, and he has Santa's helpers, which they call elves. They're like green uniforms, and they're short. And actually, if you look at the map, the Gerardus Mercator map that I talked about in my entry about Hyperborea, you'll see like they used to believe in something like Mount Meru that was there. They called it the Magnetic Mountain in the center of that lake, in the center of Hyperborea. And there's written on the land masses that surround it. In one of them, they talk about this is where the pygmies live. So that's probably where the idea of elves being short comes from, because most people in America, my generation and older, if you say elf, they think of like Santa's elf. They don't think of like Tolkien's elf, but actual elves, from Norse mythology, lived in Alfheim, and they were human sized. So the Santa's elves has more to do, I'd say I'm 90% certain, comes from that Gerardus Mercator map. And the people who live, like some of the Native Americans, like the Inuit and such, who live way up north, like in Canada and Greenland, they still have legends about short people that live on some of those frozen islands and stuff up there with them. I've seen some
Hmm.
weird stuff. So that is probably where you know, our American commercialized thing comes from, is somebody like probably some big corporation that's like, how can we fuse all these different Santa myths together? I know, let's look at here. And then they make up some bull crap and then put it on cards and other things,
Oh,
and
I
like,
actually
okay.
I like Christmas. I think it's a lot of fun. I do really like it. It does like Sinterklaas. It comes with a lot of other things. Like we do raffles, for example, and that seems to be a common theme across Europe as well. There are Slavic versions as well. There is Father Frost in Russia, and his helper is actually a girl wearing a blue dress with gold outlining, if I'm not mistaken. Silver blue robes and a furry cap or a snowflake like crown. So that is Det Moros. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. But there are, so the helpers are common everywhere, and the threat is common. And there's also the incantations. Like over here, like as a child, you have to sing. If you sing, then like you have to sing the songs loudly, and it's almost like saying a prayer.
That's
And I
actually
saw
kind
that,
of creepy.
yeah. And it is a little bit creepy, but yeah, it's a way to kind of like ward off the spirits, I guess. So there's these deeper cultural meanings behind it.
Yeah,
That are
your
quite
Zwarte
interesting.
Piet, you should do like an investigation into that because chances are that's probably something that's much older than the presence of Christianity in Europe. That's probably like some ancient Germanic mythical creature. It might have to do with Svartalfheim, the
Yeah,
realm of the dark elves. Those things, maybe those things are associated with the world tree or something like that. Kind of like trolls. It could be something
well,
else.
yeah, they try to Christianize the story. So there's still remnants in there. Like actually, and there's also in Iceland they have trolls that that come the weeks before, and they actually they're mischievous children that were turned into trolls. Called the Yule lads. It's a group of brothers, and each one has its own character. Um, and they come from the 12th of December, one night at a time. And that's also a common thing is you leave a shoe or a boot, and then you leave it here at the windowsill. Over here in Holland, you do it at if you have one at the fireplace. But yeah, so there's these these trolls. So and I know you have to go, so no, I'll keep it short. But there's in the Scandinavia, they have their own mythological creatures that are very yeah. Their appearance is kind of similar to a garden gnome. So sometimes they look like tiny old grumpy men.
Yeah.
And they live in your household or in your barn, and you have to like be nice to them, or they might take it out on you. And then like there's different ones in like Romania and in different Slavic cultures as well.
Yeah, it's
But yeah,
interesting how many legends there are about like us sharing this world with some other type of intelligence.
yeah,
And that like today, there's a lot of people that believe in ghosts and aliens. Like they think that there's aliens living in this world with us, sharing it with us. And like I don't know how much of any of that stuff is true. I tend to lean towards not true, but I also do get that feeling a lot of times that something is here with us. So
yeah.
um,
It's probably part of their old religions. But I thought it was cool, and of course now a lot of it is finding competition from Santa Claus. Like over here, that's also a thing. Like when you put up your Christmas tree, like you're supposed to wait until Sinterklaas has left the country. But yeah, so yeah, no, that's the kind of the story of who is Santa Claus and Sinterklaas. Where does he come from?
Hallmark.
And uh,
Just kidding.
yeah,
Just
and,
kidding.
and why does he have his helpers? And what do they do?
Yeah, I
But yeah,
think the helpers are some
it's
pagan
very.
tradition.
Yeah, and it's very emotional over here now because I remember when I was living in the States and I was still able to celebrate Sinterklaas with a bunch of Dutch expats over there. And I almost cried when I was able to celebrate with my daughter because it's just such an important part of your culture. Then
Yeah.
again, I can also see why some people see it as like, or they're like, they don't understand, or they don't understand this story. This tradition came about
They
before we.
also don't want to understand too, those
No,
kind of
that's
people.
true. And it also feels good to be angry. But these traditions come back like from before we even had black people in the country. So,
Right.
uh, but then again, I do understand, and I hope they can find, like they have the one now where they just have the soot on their face, and I hope that's a good
I mean,
compromise.
it honestly, dude, if it was my culture, I would just celebrate it anyways, and the fact that people that don't like me get offended by it, that would just make it all the more enjoyable. Like for me, that would be icing on the cake. I'd be like, I'm sorry, does my tradition bother you? How sad for
I mean,
you. But
sometimes like I did have a black friend in school, and they would call him Zwarte Piet sometimes. And, that was just mean.
yeah,
So
that's being a turd. That's not right. Like you shouldn't. Yeah, you shouldn't be dishonest. I'm sure that that tradition has something to do with the world tree.
yeah,
But you should find
I,
out about that and find
I
out how this thing got started.
yeah, I think it's cool that they have all these kind of like dark histories, and it's kind of like, yeah, like if you're not a good kid, you get coal, or some cultures it's a potato or an onion, or you might get beaten, and that's I think we should keep that in
Beaten
there.
for Christmas. It's
Yeah.
Christmas time. Here, you've been a bad kid. Let me remind you. I've been
Yeah,
waiting all year for this.
yeah,
That
none of that.
actually, our tradition in the United States used to be they would give you a lump of coal. But actually, one thing my mom told me when I was a kid is that real coal is actually valuable. Not like the fake charcoal kind of thing at the store, but like real coal that would actually be valuable, especially during the Industrial Revolution, like the 1800s. Think about it. Like you
Yeah,
could burn that in your stove and cook with it for a
in
while.
in Italy they actually have a witch that comes by, and some people that like if they were so poor they couldn't afford coal, they would just put a stick in there instead. So they could afford coal. Yeah, like the witch was Bafana. So she has a broom as it travels around. So anyway, yeah, there's all these darker, which is kind of cool, especially around Christmas. So
Yeah, there's a well, like it's also a tradition for people to scare their kids into behaving good. You know, the carrot and the stick method.
yeah,
Like, oh, if you do that, then this, that, and the other stuff is going to happen.
I
I
know.
never, I never did any of that with my kids. I know, I just decided like from the bat, like that there is no, I'm gonna everything I say to my kid is only gonna be something that I know is true, or that I think is true. And so, like, there were a couple times he came back from school and was like, "Oh, these other kids, they believe in Santa Claus," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's because their parents lied to them." And I said one thing you can count on is that, I mean, I guess I'm killing the tradition, but our tradition here is rubbish anyways. So, but I'm like, yeah, anything that you hear coming out of my mouth, you can know that I'm telling you the truth. You can believe it. Or if I say even if I say something wrong, it's not on purpose. It's just because I was wrong. Like I would never. So, at any rate,
If you
yeah,
want,
like,
if you want me to connect you to some Dutch expats over there, I can, so you can do
uh,
Sinterklaas party.
I can do Santa Claus. I think my tradition, I guess, like my ancestral tradition, would have been whatever they had in the Baltic Sea, which I'm not even sure. At first, I remember when I was like in early middle school, I think sixth grade, I found out that Santa Claus was based on an actual guy and that he wasn't fat. And I'm like, whoa, this dude is not fat. And he's wearing some different kind of robes. And it was like it was like some Slavic depiction. But yeah, I thought he was actually a Byzantine monk. I didn't realize that he was that early in history. So I
Yeah,
didn't know that. That was new to me.
he's actually a hit bro. It's, you got to be able to climb out those mountain houses, rooftops and stuff.
If he's first century, he may not have even had a beard.
Yeah,
Or the church schism.
yeah, I don't know. Good point. Yeah, that,
Yeah.
they added that because that was like the Norse god kind of influence. So
Well, it's also all the Eastern churches, the priests have beards.
that's true.
Syrian, Egyptian, Greek, Russian, they all have beards.
Yeah,
But this was before the church split.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. But that was my story of this week. So a little bit more. Thought it would be a little bit on topic when this releases. It's close to Sinterklaas, and if you like this story, please give us a like. Please subscribe. And if you have any suggestions, please let us know in the comment section. We appreciate your comments. We read them. We're quite likely to pick up your story. We've done quite a few viewer suggestions already. But with that, Ivor, I think we should close it out and let you do, because you got to do something, dude.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Great one.
Anything else? Yep.
I would just add, that, yeah, I mean, I guess if you like our content, leave a like, leave a comment. We're trying to check everything. If you have a request, I would suggest putting it on the most recent video because that's where we're most likely to see it. And yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you in the next one.
Great.